Hello everyone, hopefully you're able to stay safe as we all deal with the chaos of the coronavirus, and hopefully the world doesn't completely go down the gutter. At least there's some reports of the Earth's ozone layer getting a quick breather from all of our pollution before we go back to beating it down. In this video I wanted to continue trying to make mini dioramas again because I think they're the most fun to make for me because everything is just so tiny. Also, I attempted to encase one of these completely in resin to solidify them in time, but that kind of failed this time, but at least I got to learn from it. Anyways, hope you guys enjoy and stay safe out there from crazy people. We'll start off by cutting up our XPS foam with a hot wire table. It's a tiny little block of foam, about 3.5 inches on each side. I actually measured this block out for the first time because I wanted to make more dioramas of a similar size. I just brushed the pieces top and bottom to help the foam and glue stick better together. I have enough Sculptamold for 2 identical dioramas because I wanted to apply it to both to try and save time, but I'd recommend only applying mold for one at a time since it ended up taking longer than I thought it would, and so my other diorama needed more wet sculpting later with the tool. This is the wet sculpting I meant earlier. I think if I just focused on one at a time, I probably wouldn't have needed to sculpt the rocks for this diorama. Now we can apply our base colors to the scene. These colors are not too important since they'll be covered up in some way by other things, and their primary purpose is just to get rid of the white from the Sculptamold. Once the base colors are done, we can start adding any of our primary colors to the rock formations. I personally didn't like the yellow ochre color for my rocks, but I had to see how it would look since I'm trying to use less colors for my rocks. This diorama ended up being the one that I sacrificed, so it's all good. I tried to just dab the colors on with my brush. Once our rocks are painted, we can add our dirt to the scene with some matte Mod Podge diluted with water. Sometimes the glue will start to separate before you add the dirt, and it'll just create a spotty dirt surface when it dries, so I do manageable sections at a time or reapply any glue if needed. I made the holes for my trees here, but I'll be adding them later since I didn't want them to be in the way when I pour my water resin in. I just use some scotch tape and a hot glue gun to keep the resin from seeping out. Sometimes the tape will become a part of the resin, but most of the time it comes off almost completely once the resin cures. I just use a tabletop epoxy resin for my water, which requires a 50-50 ratio of hardener and epoxy. It for the most part comes out clear with dye without the need for a torch to get rid of any bubbles. You'll see later though that the resin with no dye comes out yellowish. I was very satisfied with how my resin turned out. I'd almost call it perfect. Now we can begin placing our fine turf and bushes. I usually place my turf and bushes before my trees so they're not in the way. And to seal the turf and bushes completely in place, I use isopropyl alcohol and scenic glue. I apparently didn't hit record for dripping the glue, so apologies for that. Now we can begin placing our trees down. I like to figure out where my trees will go before I place them to test what I think looks good. Once we have our tree placements finalized, we can use full strength matte Mod Podge to glue them in place. This glue dries clear, so I don't worry about using more than I think I need to make sure the tree remains in place. I didn't want to wait a couple days to add more sculpted mold to really create a cool ground base, since this diorama is most likely going to in the grinder, so I just painted the base brown and moved on. To create my waves or water ripples, I like to use gloss Mod Podge. I really like how they came out while using an airbrush on them, but you could also just use a brush. I'd recommend only doing small sections at a time because this glue dries pretty fast and the glue will just crumble when it gets blown by the airbrush, as you'll see. I failed like twice because I tried covering the whole scene with glue before using the airbrush. If you do small sections at a time, it should end up looking something like this. I personally thought the water came out great in the end, so it was worth redoing the water and peeling away the glue a couple times. I forgot how, but my tree ended up breaking in half at some point, but it was unfortunately very easy to replace. Now begins the beginning of the end for this diorama. To encase my diorama, I first wanted to create a base using dirt and epoxy resin with acrylic glass to hold them. Looking back, I probably should have placed my diorama partially into the dirt base so it doesn't try to float away, as you'll see later. I created the base a few days before I tried covering the entire diorama in resin. Before I destroyed my greatest creation, I had to record some video of it to remember it before I had to sacrifice it in the name of XP. The end of this diorama's tale. In the end, it was a partial failure, but at least I made a second one and I got to see how encasing a diorama could potentially look like, but there's still a lot of problems to solve, like all those bubbles, but a problem for another day. Thank you guys for watching if you made it to the end, and I hope you enjoyed. Stay safe out there, you beautiful people, and try not to cough on 30K worth of groceries if possible. Peace.